Hey there, my name is Chris Acton with Acting Creative, and this is a Handwoven Experience, episode 116. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about how to space an unknown fiber. So, in your weaving career, there's a really good chance that at some point you will come across some unknown fibers. You'll be at a Weavers Guild meeting and you will bid on a Rubbermaid tub full of cones. You will have a neighbor who is no longer weaving and they'll just give you a whole garbage bags full of tubes and balls and skeins and all kinds of wonderful things. But there's a very good chance you will come across some kind of fiber that you don't know what it is. It is unidentified. If there was ever a sticker in there, it is long gone. You couldn't read it anyways if there was. So how do you know how to space a fiber that you're not familiar with? First of all, let me just make a note that identifying the fiber, that's a whole different discussion, and we'll talk about that later. But for this episode, I'm going to talk about how to decide how to space a fiber you aren't familiar with. So here's what I recommend to start. Start with a fiber you are familiar with. This is a cotton. I love this. This is a typical carpet warp, rug warp, whatever you want to call it, unmercerized 8/4 cotton. And I know how this fiber functions. I know how I like to set it in a project. And I typically have two different sets that I utilize when I'm using this yarn. I like to set it as far apart as 8 ends per inch if I am doing something, say, with recycled materials, or I want a little space so that you can really see what's happening in the weft. But most of the time, I set it at 12 ends per inch. This would be, I would consider that a twill spacing. What you'll notice when you look at charts for how to space your yarns, your warp yarns, is that they typically have two numbers. The lower number is for plain weave and the higher number is for twill. So twill, you typically want them to be a little closer together. So in this instance, I want to discover a twill setting, it ends per inch, for my unknown yarn that is very similar to whatever I would use for my known yarn. So let's bring in some visuals, shall we? So take your, in this case, my cotton, or whatever yarn you know, the ones you're very familiar with. Take ruler, measuring tape, yardstick, whatever you have. Pick out an inch on here. I'm going to do this one right here, and wrap your yarn around it however many times you normally would for the spacing that you're aiming for, shall we? Okay, so let's see. We got 1, 2, 3. It's not going to be real neat, folks, just to warn you. 4, 5, 6, okay, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, lovely. That is my inch. You see that? I have 12 yarns in between that inch right there. That is the spacing that I know that I like when I'm going to do a twill spaced project. I don't necessarily have to do a twill, but that is the kind of spacing that I want. Okay, so this is my goal with my unknown yarn. I want it to kind of look like that. See how there's maybe like a yarn's width in between each one, approximately. Okay, so here's where I like to start. First of all, let's just compare sizes, right? So I know, let's see, this is my blue. Where's my unknown fiber here? All right, let's see what these guys look like. You see that? The red is bigger than the blue. No two ways about it. It's also fuzzier than the blue, which is an interesting kind of property. Anyways, so I know that the red is a little bit bigger than the blue, so I may need less than 12 ends in an inch. So let's get our handy dandy ruler and let's get a visual for us just to see what we're working with here. Okay, so same song and dance. I'm gonna wrap my yarn in this inch 12 times and see just how close together that is. This is 4, 5, 6. They are close together. I can tell already. 7, 8, 9, 10. It's a lot of counting, I know. 11, 12. Okay. There, let's see. There we go. There's my inch. Those are closer. right? Clearly, I think visually they look a lot closer than what my blue ones looked like. So that tells me that I need to have fewer ends in 1 inch for my project to achieve similar results. So I'm going to back it up 2. Let's see what 10 looks like for us, shall we? We'll just kind of shift things around a little bit. Let's see. Okay, that's what 10 looks like. That's closer. I may even back it up to 8. Let's see what 8 looks like for us. We want a little breathing room in between the yarns because we're kind of modeling it after the yarn that we know. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, I didn't do that very gracefully, but that's what 8 looks like. I'm thinking 8 is the answer for me. Now, you can see that this is not exactly real scientific, but there is a method to the madness. I want to mimic the results with the yarn that I know using a yarn that I'm not familiar with, right? So here's what I would say for your project. If there's a project that you're just kind of playing with to experiment to find out what your yarn can do your best guess and set it at that sett, S-E-T-T, use that set and try out your project. So for me, I would set it at 8 ends per inch and I would see what the results were using that spacing. If the project was very important and it had to be exactly right, I would do a little mock-up, do a little sample just to see what is going to be better for the results that you want in your project. So that's what I always like to recommend. If the project is very important, you need to have it exactly right, then give yourself a little extra scientific time to play with the spacing. But if you were just kind of kicking it around to see what it'll do, take your best guess and off you go. You can always make notes and adjust for the next project. So my goal here is just to encourage you to use the yarns you don't know. If you have these lovely cones and tubes sitting on your shelf, but you're like, I don't know how to use it. Now you do. Make your best guess. Create a spacing that you think is gonna be great for your project. Trust your gut and go to town. You can do this. If it doesn't turn out great, wonderful. You learned lots of things. You can make adjustments for the next time around. But I'm guessing it'll be great. So be brave, friends. Pull out that yarn, that unknown yarn, and give it a whirl. All right. Have a great week. Happy weaving.